Hello and welcome. In this video, we will talk about water vapor sorption in cementitious materials, which is a part of Horizon 2020 funded project ERICA. Let us have an overview of the subject. Why do we care about water sorption in cementitious materials in the first place? During the service life of cementitious materials, cyclic changes of moisture content or relative humidity takes place due to external environmental conditions. As cement is a porous material, it allows for the transfer of this moisture, which means it can absorb or release moisture depending on the external humidity. It swells when it absorbs and shrinks when the moisture leaves. Additionally, due to this moisture transfer, it can also induce deteriorating mechanisms such as cracks, carbonation, alkali-silica reaction, chloride ingress, among others. So, for durability assessments, it is useful to study moisture change response of cementitious materials. It can serve as a crucial input for modeling and simulations, as well as because of the small probe diameter of water, which is 0.28 nanometers, it can probe very small pores of cementitious microstructure and therefore can help in the understanding of the microstructure. To pave the way for same, we have employed 4 techniques to study water sorption behavior in cementitious materials. So the first technique is to acquire water vapor sorption, but before we delve further into this technique, let us first review what is sorption. So the adsorption, which is a surface phenomena, is addition of atoms, ions or molecules as the enrichment of one or more components in an interfacial layer. In moisture sorption, we consider this vapor-solid interface. Now the solid is called the adsorbent and the vapor, which is capable of being adsorbed, is called adsorptive. The fluid in the adsorbed state is called adsorbate, and adsorption, which is the surface phenomena, and absorption, which is the volume phenomena, together is called sorption or absorption sometimes, and the reverse is called desorption. And desorption or the master desorption isotherm is acquired when a cement paste which is saturated in state, that is at 100% relative humidity, is dried all the way to 0% relative humidity. And in the same fashion, first master absorption isotherm is acquired when the cement paste is saturated back to 100% relative humidity. Now in this project, we have used dynamic vapor sorption equipment from surface measurement system to acquire water sorption isotherm. So here the relative humidity is obtained by the carrier gas, which is adjusted by 2 mass flow controllers, and it modifies the mixing ratio of dry and wet carrier gas streams. So we change the relative humidity and it is an automatic system, and as the sample sorbs or desorbs water, the weight changes, and this is the information that is recorded by the software. And in contrast to the automatic or the short-term water vapor sorption measurements, there is a static data acquisition or the long-term water vapor measurements, which are conducted using saturated salt solution based desiccators. So here we use various saturated salt solutions to create different relative humidity, and this is a manual process. So here the sample is relatively large and it takes more time, and this is how we get our sorption isotherms. Now moving on to our second technique is the poromechanics modeling. So in poromechanics modeling, mature cement paste are modeled as microheterogeneous materials with 2 pore families at different scales. At the larger scale, cement paste consists of unhydrated clinker grains embedded in a hydrate foam matrix. The hydrate foam matrix consists of capillary pores embedded in a hydrate gel matrix. The hydrate gel matrix in turn consists of gel pores embedded in the solid hydrates. The volume fractions of each component are given by Power's hydration model. The pore families are assumed to follow exponential pore distribution. Now let us move to the third technique, which is proton nuclear magnetic resonance imaging and relaxometry. In the NMR experiment, when the sample is placed in the magnetic field, all hydrogen nuclei aligned with the magnetic field. In a basic experiment, a radio frequency pulse is applied to flip that such that the nuclei are away from the alignment with respect to the magnetic field. Immediately after applying the pulse, the decay of the signal is observed. The decay time is called the T2 relaxation time. In cementitious materials, water can be found in different pore sizes. Thus, the T2 relaxation time differ. In the larger pores, hydrogen nuclei will relax longer than chemically bond hydrogen. As in various environments, nucleus will have different molecular motion. High in case of capillary pores due to the pore size, and low in case of confined water in crystalline. So this is very clear that the T2 decay time is proportional to the pore size. And as we can see on the scale, T2 decay time of the signal varies from microseconds for water in solid or crystalline environment and CSH gel pores through milliseconds for water in capillary pores. Now, what about the amplitude of the signal? The amplitude of the signal is directly proportional to the number of hydrogen nuclei. Thus, the amount of water in different pore fraction can be estimated. More about NMR technique can be found in this video by clicking the link below. Further, the inverse Laplace transform algorithm is commonly employed to obtain pore size distribution of cementitious material, and more advanced CPMG experiment Carr-Purcell-Myboom-Gill sequence is also used to obtain pore size distribution. The algorithm converts the NMR signal from the time domain to the T2 relaxation time domain. We observe the distribution of peaks that correspond to different pore fraction. To distinguish the different peaks, each peak is integrated and the ratio to the total integrated intensity is calculated. Thus, the amount of particular pore fraction is estimated. Furthermore, it is also possible to acquire the sorption behavior by using NMR technique. Now, by using different salt solutions that were introduced before, the samples can be subjected to different relative humidity, and the NMR measurements can be performed to explore the evolution of different water populations or pore spaces during the sorption process. The sorption could be measured constantly through the process with the additional techniques such as water sorption data that is simultaneously measured with dynamic vapor sorption. Removing the samples from the control environment and measuring it and putting it back can be quickly done if the CPMG sequence is employed. Therefore, it will not disturb the equilibrium relative humidity of the sample. Now we will talk about the fourth and the final technique that we use to study the sorption behavior of cement, and this is the Lattice Boltzmann methodology. To understand the structure of cement-based materials and their behavior during sorption cycle, it is important to understand fluid flow at microstructural level. Now, Lattice Boltzmann is flexible computational fluid dynamics solver that closes the gap between the macroscale and the microscale analysis. It has multiple applications from turbulence flow, chemical reactions, heat transfer, and multiphase fluid analysis. This technique aims to relax a system towards equilibrium and uses what is called the Lattice Boltzmann equation, which describes how fluid phases interact with one another to reach an equilibrium. And the equation, the Lattice Boltzmann equation, equates to Navier-Stokes equation of fluid dynamics. This means that it can be easily explained by the simple physics equation. Now let us move on to how actually Lattice Boltzmann works. Now start off by considering a macro-sized body of fluid consisting of micro-sized particles, which are the red dots. Now each particle is moving in the fluid with a certain velocity vector E, represented by the red arrows, and is found at a certain position in the fluid R at a given time t. These particles have various possibilities for interaction with one another. Let's look at a smaller area of this fluid enclosed in a little black box. The lattice Boltzmann, as its name suggests, is based on a lattice network of equidistant nodes, noted in gray. A red node signifies a packet of fluid at that particular node, and this has the possibility to interact with its neighboring nodes by a discrete probability distribution function. This means that there are 8 possibilities of it to interact with its neighbors, which equate to the 8 red arrows, and the 1 possibility for a portion of fluid to remain at the red lattice node. Now, in the middle picture, lattice Boltzmann is a two-step process where the particles can interact with one another by streaming to neighboring nodes. And finally, the third picture shows that the central red fluid node also receives fluid from its neighbors by means of collision that has been indicated by blue arrows, and this process keeps on occurring until the system reaches an equilibrium, and this forms the basis of understanding of lattice Boltzmann. Now we will move to the key results of this project. So from dynamic vapor sorption measurements, we learned that we see 2 sudden jumps in the sorption isotherms, which have been initially proposed that they correspond to microstructural changes of the cementitious material, but using phase diagram of water, we could identify that the kink at low relative humidity of 0.3 PV by PSAT is actually because of the homogeneous cavitation. So this sudden jump that has been indicated by blue arrow at 30% relative humidity is because of homogeneous cavitation, and another sudden jump or kink at 80% relative humidity happens because of the heterogeneous cavitation. Now let us talk about the results from poromechanics modeling. Based on the Kelvin-Cohan equation, the pore size distribution of the sample can be calculated from the sorption isotherm. For instance, in the diagram shown here, in a mature cement paste with initial water to cement ratio of 0.4, the gel porosity is found to be around 2 nanometers and capillary porosity has been found to be around 12 nanometers. Now we will see the sorption behavior as acquired by NMR. So as we see here, it is possible to have a sorption curve from the signal intensity of the NMR experiment, in this case from the CPMG sequence, which is shown here. This signal is related to evaporable water inside the sample. We see here the hysteresis loop throughout all the relative humidity levels, and it is very similar to the figure we would have when we would have acquired the sorption behavior weighing the samples. And now we will talk about the results obtained from the NMR and MRI. So the time dependent and water saturated porosity. Now, as we know from the previous studies, cement has a multimodal pore size distribution. The dominant material through which water moves is gel porosity. There are 3 critical pore sizes, about 1 nanometers for interlayer spaces, about 3 to 5 nanometer for gel pores, and above 9 nanometers larger capillary pores. In this subpart of the project, we developed a simple transport model where the input is obtained using magnetic resonance imaging technique. The one-dimensional magnetic resonance imaging was used to record water movement in a cement sample with spatial resolution. In the model, we assume that porosity is always relaxing exponentially towards a water saturation dependent equilibrium. An effective transport coefficient is a function not only of the pore size distribution but also depends on filled porosity fraction. On the figure, wetting data of previously dried cement paste sample 60 mm long is presented. With blue color, interlayer water is denoted, and by green color, gel porosity is denoted. The red color denotes capillary pores. We observe porosity relaxation with time towards equilibrium. In the table, effective diffusion coefficient of 3 pore components along with relaxation times are presented, which are obtained from the model. Now we can calculate the effective transport coefficient of cementitious materials, which is a very important parameter, however is very difficult to estimate with other techniques, but is quite useful in the models that are used to predict the service life of cementitious materials. And now we will move further and discuss the results from the Lattice Boltzmann modeling and simulation. Now we have already seen that Lattice Boltzmann can be used to create and model cementitious calcium silicate hydrate sheets in a multi-phase liquid and vapor environment. In this video, you can see here, if you look at the video, that there is a cement microstructure modeled as black CSH sheets interacting with white liquid and gray vapor. This microstructure undergoes a single desorption and sorption cycle where sorption phenomena can be observed at different stages. During desorption, liquid is uniformly removed from across the structure and vapor bubbles start to form. Since these are at high pressure system than the surroundings, the black solid move in response to the creation of vapor bubbles. Liquid keeps on evaporating from the system until we reach a fully dried state, and then it goes adsorption. In the pictures, using the Lattice Boltzmann method, we can understand what is happening in a cementitious material in the microstructure and look at any specific stage of a sorption cycle. As you can see here, that at 97%, or when it is fully wet, or when it is partially wet, and then it is fully re-wet. Now let us go to the key wins of this project. So the first key win was the understanding of the metastability associated with water when it is used as a probe molecule to study the microstructure of cementitious materials. The second key win was to use the poromechanics modeling to obtain pore size distribution of cementitious materials. Further, we used NMR relaxometry to study and obtain the sorption and resaturation behavior of hardened cement paste. And finally, the Lattice Boltzmann modeling for CSH sheet microstructure in multiphase environment for sorption cycle was done. With this, we would like to thank you for your attention. The funding for this project has been provided under Project Grant Agreement ID 764691. Visit us at www.erica-etn.eu and also visit our LinkedIn page by ERICA-ITN. And thanks again for watching. Bye.